When people share good news about their life, people don't necessarily respond positively. You know, they don't get encouragement. And people need so little encouragement. It's just unbelievable. You can't imagine how good it is to be able to go to places you've never been and to have people stop you on the street spontaneously and say, look, my life is way better than it was. It's like, it's so good.
Do you think media makes us smarter or stupider?
Look, imagine that you're a little kid and your parents are neglectful and you're in your crib most of the time, but the television is on. Well, that's a hell of a lot better than just being in your crib. And so it is pretty clear too, over the last century, on average, IQ levels have gone up by quite a substantial amount. And the reason for that seems to be that the very low end has been pushed up. And some of that's going to be a consequence of increased nutrition, and some of it's going to be a consequence of the fact that television is a lot better than nothing, like infinitely better. Now, whether television is better for you than, a diet of high quality literature, that's a whole different question. Whether it's better for you than playing properly with your peers, engaging in pretend play and all the other things that you have to do to establish yourself as a competent child, that's also another question. But generally speaking, I would say that the dispersion of the media technology we have has made us far more intelligent. And the other thing that's worth thinking about too is that computers also make us more intelligent, I would say, not because of the content, but because of the technology. You got to be pretty damn organized and sharp to keep your phone and your computer working. These are high maintenance gadgets. The whole point of free speech, as far as I can tell, the deep point of free speech is that, it's all as if we're riding on the back of a giant snake and it's twisting and turning all the time, and we're trying to figure out how to stay in the center so that we don't fall off the sides, And sometimes it's time for a bit of a tilt to the left, and sometimes it's time for a bit of a tilt to the right. And the only way you can tell when that time is by having a discussion about it. And so it's the discussion that keeps us centered. It's not the fact that the conservatives are right or that the liberals are right. They're both necessary, annoying as that is.
Why is it that so many powerful political families send their kids off to boarding school? What are your thoughts on boarding school?
Well, I don't think that there's any evidence that there's not a lot of evidence that school quality per se is a determining factor in the outcome of educational processes. That actually seems to be a situation. I mean, there are exceptions, and I'm certainly not trying to say that every school is equal, but a tremendous amount of what determines whether or not a child is successful at school is their intelligence. I mean, you people all went to high school, to junior high school. I mean, you know that in a group of 30 kids, there's some kids that are so bright that they figure everything out in the first 15 seconds, and there are other kids who just can't get it no matter how hard they try. And that's one of the really catastrophic and built-in inequalities in the world. Generally in boarding schools, because wealth and intelligence tend to be correlated, which is also something you'd expect, right? You'd expect more intelligent people to be able to make more money, or you'd certainly at least expect less intelligent people to be able to make less money. The schools generally produce good outcomes, but it's not obvious that it's because of the schools. This is true at higher levels of education too, to a degree that people don't really realize. So, for example, at a university like Harvard, any of the Ivy Leagues, it's very, very difficult to get in, right? So there's far more applicants than there are positions, and they use the SAT as one of the entry criteria. So you have to have a very high SAT score, and then generally you have to be good at least one or two other things to be considered. And a very large percentage, for example, of Harvard undergraduates, and there's only about 4,000 of them, so it's a rather small school, were valedictorians of their class. And they have very high SAT scores, and the SAT is a proxy for IQ. The people who administer the SAT don't like to admit that, but there's absolutely no doubt that it's the case, because any set of questions that assess general knowledge and problem-solving ability you can derive an IQ score from. And so part of the advantage of hiring an Ivy League graduate isn't the fact that they went to a high-quality school, it's the fact that it was impossible to get in. And so the screening has been done for the employee, for the employer, by the admissions process at the school. And the same thing is true of business schools, and the people who run business schools know that, is that the primary value that they offer, and again, this is not the case with every business school, is the fact that if you hire an MBA from their program, and it's a very selective program, then you have a very high probability of hiring someone who's intrinsically intelligent and conscientious. And that's a great predictor. Those are great predictors of long-term success. So, and what would you expect in a society that's essentially meritocratic? It's pretty straightforward to think this through. Not only should people who are faster and smarter be more productive, especially if they're hardworking, but that's really what you'd want, isn't it? I mean, how the hell do you want to set up your society? You want to set up your society so that incompetent people who do nothing succeed? That first of all, that can't happen.